Today's video is sponsored by Into the AM. What is going on to all my movie fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, MovieFiles. We are back with a brand new early special movie review, and I say special because this was a film that did make my top 10 most anticipated films of 2022, and here we are discussing it. We're talking about Jordan Peele's third film, Nope, which I got a chance to check out in theaters the other night. I'm so excited to break it all down for you all because we will be diving deep into the film without spoiling anything, and I'm so excited to do so. But before we get into today's discussion, if you all enjoy movie news, TV news, reviews, and everything in between, well, make sure you're giving me a follow on Instagram as well as on TikTok. You can find those links to those social media accounts in the description of this video. If you all are new to the channel, welcome to the community. I want to take a moment to thank you all because we recently just crossed 30,000 subscribers, and it means so much to me. I love this community, and I want you all to be a part of it. So if you enjoy early movie reviews, daily and weekly TV breakdowns, live discussions, will consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. If you enjoyed today's breakdown, make sure you're giving it a thumbs up as well as sharing it. But more importantly, yeah, this is one of those films that's going to spark a lot of conversations, and I want to have those conversations with you all in the comment sections, from your pros, your cons, your thoughts on Jordan Peele's direction, his writing, the performances. Were you scared? Did you enjoy the narrative, the mysteries, the twists, the turns, and what were some things that didn't work for you all? And since this is not his first, not his second, but his third film, why don't you rank all of his films for your personal preference in the comment section, and let's have those discussions down there. So again, very excited to see this film. Got the chance to see it in a packed house, I mind you, in the theaters last night, and yeah, did it live up to my expectations? Well, let's get into the discussion with starting off with the man himself, the writer, the director, Jordan Peele, who I'm a fan of, and let's get into it. Whether it's 2017's Get Out, 2019's Us, regardless of how you feel about those products and those films themselves, there's no denying the growth in the storytelling. The filmmaking is undoubtedly incredible from Jordan Peele. He's become a master at building suspense and invoking so many emotions within his work. And when you look at Nope, for example, this film's giving you thrills, giving you sense of levity, but also giving you emotions and caring for the characters on this journey. So again, regardless of how you feel about this film and his previous two films, for me, if you appreciate film, I don't know how you can't deny that he is a great filmmaker. I don't think people are going to be sitting here watching Nope being like, you know what, I don't know if he can continue to do directing, because he's just a incredible storyteller, in my personal humble opinion. But getting into the writing perspective here, I really appreciate, especially being a horror fan and a fan of film, the homages that he's written into this particular script. I think of films, when I think of Nope, I saw shades of Close Encounters, Jaws, Signs, Space Odyssey, and Alien. So there's a lot of moments within the narrative which I really appreciated, those films that I consider to be classic being injected into this film in a very original way, may I add, in that matter. So let's talk about Jordan Peele and just the progression as a filmmaker, with this film in particularly being the biggest film that he's given us so far. And what I mean by that is, in regards to when you have this type of mind that Jordan Peele has, you need someone to capture this massive idea, this conveying of the story, and Jordan Peele's found this guy in the cinematographer. A personal favorite of mine, Hoyte van Hoytema, did that perfectly. Now, you all might know him from his work from 007 Spectre, Dunkirk, Ad Astra, and most recently Tenet. And my personal favorite, Interstellar. This man has an eye for scope and scale and just awe and just breathtaking shots. And just looking at Hoyte's work in this movie, this film is so massive, and it truly allows you to immerse yourself in the experience. And I'm telling y'all now, if there's anything you want to take away from this review, I encourage you all, if you plan on seeing this film based on my thoughts and of course your personal opinion on if you want to see it in the first place, please, ladies and gentlemen, see this on the biggest screen that you have in your neighborhood. And I'm talking in particularly IMAX, because again, there are moments, there's so many shots, just beautiful imagery. There's so many moments in this film where I felt so small as an audience member based on what I was seeing on screen, especially when you look at this mysterious thing that our characters are interacting with within the film. So again, it's huge, it's big, it is something worth, just from the scale alone, is worth seeing in theaters. preferably in IMAX. And I'm not being sponsored by IMAX, which I do have a sponsor in this video, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But again, see this on the biggest screen possible. So again, last thing I want to mention, if you all know me, I love to always highlight good productions in movies, and I'm going to continue that trend because I appreciate the look, the feel, but also the sound. And in particularly when it comes to the sound, this Peele and Michael Abels, the composer that he's worked with on his previous 2 films and he brought back with this film, this relationship to me is akin to, now I'm not speaking hyperbole, I'm not saying that it's on the levels of these 2 creators, but it reminds me of Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer in regards to how I feel as though Michael is able to embody what Peele is wanting to make you feel from the music and the score, which I thought was fantastic. Again, all of Jordan Peele's films to me, including Nope, the score is a character within itself because it kind of tells the narrative. It obviously sets the tone, the atmosphere, and the mood. And again, this Peele and Michael relationship that he has with his composer, again, I'm not saying it's Christopher Nolan, Hans Zimmer, because Hans Zimmer is my favorite composer of all time, but I feel like they just know each other. There's like such a great synergy between the director and the composer that we have here. So I really appreciate those elements. But speaking of appreciation, let's talk about this cast, because I think Jordan Peele really is bringing out a lot of great stuff from these great cast members, these great actors, I have to say, which I thought were phenomenal. Whether it's Steven Yeun, who plays Jupe in this film, who adds a very important element to the theme of monetizing and exploiting trauma and past trauma that you experience, and more of him, discussion to be had in a spoiler review that I will be shooting here after I shoot this video a little bit later today. So I'm going to talk more about Steven Yeun's character because he has a particular element in the film that I'm really excited to talk more to you all about. But I thought that Steven Yeun was great in the role. I also think of someone who I grew up with as a kid, and I always looked at him as a villain. I'm talking about Michael Wincott, who in the film plays a cinematographer in this film who has a very jaded point of view of life, and I thought that his inclusion in the film was really interesting. But kind of transitioning into some of our main cast, we have another character here by the name of Angel, played by Perea, who is the fries tech guy who helps our crew, our main cast, who we're going to really break down here. He's helping them trying to capture this mysterious object in the sky, and I really thought that his character was really interesting because he's the guy that's like, he's really into conspiracies. Are there UFOs? Does the government like to hide truths from their people? So I enjoyed his narrative and his performance. But there's some standouts, and I think y'all know who I'm talking about, Keke Palmer and Daniel Kaluuya, who's worked with Jordan Peele in the past with obviously Get Out. First off, let's talk about Daniel Kaluuya, who I'm such a big fan of, and I'm going to be honest with you all. He's intentionally told to play more of a kind of a dry character, which can be, it almost makes you feel kind of detached from the character, which is intentional, but it sometimes makes the experience a little bit like it takes you a bit to kind of get into his characters. But when you look at the film in a certain lens, it takes a while to kind of get on the page with him, but when you look at the narrative and the story and the relationship, in particularly with Keith David, who plays his father in this film, you kind of understand why he is this way, right? He's kind of conditioned to be this way without giving too much away. But as always, Daniel Kaluuya knows the assignment. He delivers the goods, and he is able to study and learn this mysterious thing in the sky. And at the same time, he's trying to continue to keep his family legacy afloat, at the same time trying to kind of make sure this relationship that he has with his sister is working out. So again, Daniel Kaluuya is absolutely fantastic. And speaking of his sister, perfect segue, let's talk about Keke Palmer. She offers more of the comedy in the film, but at the same time, she's asked to be more serious and play to those more dramatic beats. She's able to do that with ease. So I was not only impressed with Daniel Kaluuya, but I honestly walked out of the film and said, man, and I've been a fan of Keke. I've been following her career for a while, but she really showcased her acting sensibilities in this film. Again, she offers a lot of the levity that I mentioned that Jordan Peele likes to put in a lot of his films. She does that perfectly. But when she's asked to kind of be more grounded in reality and kind of, again, highlight those more dramatic elements within this narrative, I thought she did that incredibly beautifully in this film. So transitioning over to talking about the story and the messages and the themes and the tones without spoiling anything, let's kind of have that discussion now. So the trailer pretty much lays it out pretty simply. I don't want to dive too much into the synopsis, but as the trailer shows, there's an object in the sky, right? A UFO of a sorts, and the characters want to attempt to capture it on tape so they become rich and famous. You know, it's simple premise, but there's a lot more layers to that premise, and I'm going to try to break it down here without, again, giving too much away from this story. When it comes to this narrative and the themes, there were some things that stood out to me, and this is just kind of listing a few, and again, we're going to talk more about it in a spoiler review, but just kind of highlighting some of those now. The themes of how trauma can shape you, exploiting trauma and how that can limit you in a sense, but also this idea of what people are willing to do to capture fame and fortune and money, and how it can somewhat corrupt your decision making, right? There's also social commentary, which we've come to know from Jordan Peele's work, and it's not too, I don't want to say heavy-handed, because I know some people feel a certain way about Get Out and Us, which I really enjoy those films, especially Get Out. But there's another bit of social commentary that I was very surprised with in Jordan Peele's narrative here, and particularly when it comes to taking someone out of their natural environment and what happens to them when they snap is something that this film tackles, and also this idea of a predator and when you push a predator and when they bite back. So I kind of like that narrative there, and that's something that this film explores, as well as Peele also shines a light on, again, going back to the more racial social commentary that he implements in his story. The idea of being erased or forgotten about or ignored history within the Black community is something that they also shine a light on, which I appreciated. So again, I would advise you all at home to try to not go into the film trying to figure out the mystery, the twist. Just watch the film, because I kind of went into the film, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I kind of went to the film with those kind of lenses on and try to, man, what does this mean? What is that? Just try to sit back and enjoy the film, and just like Christopher Nolan's Tenet, feel the film, right? So I'll give you all a tip in that way. So lastly, is Nope scary? I'm a junkie when it comes to horror, and I'm very desensitized towards horror, but I also know there's a lot of subgenres within the horror realm, and also being scared is subjective. But in my personal opinion, this plays more to the subgenre of horror when it comes to, I felt like Get Out was more of a psychological horror. I feel like Us was more of a kind of a slasher of sorts, where this film, Nope, to me, in my opinion, is more of a suspenseful, thrilling narrative, more of a mystery in its story, but also, I will say, there's some blood in this film, more so than any of his films, and also a pretty high, unexpectedly high body count. So again, I wasn't necessarily scared, but you might be. But definitely there's thrills, there's mystery, there's suspense within the subgenre within horror. Going more into this whole idea of redefining horror, and particularly the alien genre within horror. Now, for me personally, I feel like the UFO element in this film, I've never seen it done like this before, and I feel like it's definitely defining the subgenre within the horror realm, and there are just elements that I didn't expect from this whole UFO alien narrative that we see within this film. And also, one more thing I want to mention before we kind of dive into some other discussions here. The title, Nope, right? I feel like it's a perfect title. It plays within the title, right? It's a lot of fun within the title. It's very meta within itself, especially from the point of view of being Black. You know, Black people in horror versus other ethnicities in horror. It's a different perspective when you have a Black lead dealing with these situations. And again, Nope. So again, I'll just kind of leave it at that. I really enjoyed how the title played into the narrative. So kind of get into this discussion here. There's a lot of good to say about the film, but there's also some things I didn't like about the film. Before we transition into that, we are sponsored, and I want to give a word, take a time for the sponsor in this video, Into the AM. Today's video is sponsored by Into the AM. Into the AM is a clothing company with a variety of amazing products such as t-shirts, hoodies, jackets, shorts and underwear, headwear, and much more. Their t-shirts have unique designs, they're incredibly soft and extremely comfortable, and they're made to last. But the best part is, you can get 10% off by using my discount code MovieFiles when you're selecting your new gear, which you can find that code in the description below. I am someone that loves Into the AM. I'm wearing their shirts now. I am such a big fan, and as someone that's wearing it, it feels good, it fits well, it looks good. So if you want to be able to have some of these shirts and all their other incredible apparel, check out the link in the description of this video to use my discount, and it helps out the channel, but more importantly, you're going to be looking good. So go ahead and check out Into the AM. So let's transition into my criticism, starting off with the small things first. The film's pacing. So I will say it starts off in a way that's very intriguing, very interesting, and kind of kicks off. It's something in the sky we got to try to figure out, and it kind of gets things rolling. But at points of the film, and particularly in the beginning, it takes a little bit to get into the main plot, into the story. Just a little small nitpick, but let's talk about my main issues with this film without giving things away. The pacing's off. The pacing is definitely off, in my opinion, throughout the film and parts of the movie. And particularly, I feel like the second half takes a bit, it drags on. The third act, very exhilarating, very interesting third act, very grandiose third act. But there are even points in the third act where I feel like it was a little bit of moments of unnecessary plots that didn't really add up. And the pacing, to me, ultimately is an issue with this film, without a doubt. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes. There could have been about 15 minutes that weren't as integral to the story, and I'll get to that a little bit later, but I will say the pacing was an issue that I have with this film. Character development, I felt as though there are some unfinished business within the family that we have in this film. I'm talking about Daniel Kaluuya, Keke Palmer, and their father in this film, and I feel like there was a family drama element that wasn't explored within this family dynamic, in which it was implied that Keke Palmer and her father didn't see eye to eye, and they really point to that, but they don't really explicitly go into the details of that relationship and how it affects Daniel Kaluuya's relationship with his sister. So I wish they would have developed that element, because it was very integral into their dynamic as far as brothers and sisters. So I wish we would have developed that a little bit more. And also, I felt like at points, I was at arm's length with the characters and their motives and some of their emotional reactions to certain things. And again, I felt like as though comparing this to Get Out and Us, for me personally, I felt disconnect emotionally, speaking to kind of Jordan Peele, focusing more on the spectacle of the story more so than the characters. And I felt like Get Out was more of a character focus. Us was more of a character focus with spectacle, right? But I feel like this film was more so focusing on the scope, the scale, still having good character moments, but wasn't as focused on the characters as he was with his previous works, in my opinion. So that kind of brings me, for example, I mentioned Steven Yeun earlier, who I really enjoyed his performance, but there's a Gordy subplot. And when you see the film, you know what I'm talking about. I understand, and we're going to talk about this in a spoiler discussion more. I understand what the message was in this subplot, and I understand the point of it, but I felt like it could have been handled differently. And I can see how some people will feel it was completely unnecessary to be in the film, because it didn't really ultimately affect the end of the film. So again, we're going to talk more about that subplot, because I think it's going to be a hot topic. There's a lot of mystery, and also, may I add, the Gordy scene, very brutal, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But we're going to talk more about that in a spoiler review. But last thing I want to mention is that, to me, and going into this film, again, this is kind of a me thing. Jordan Peele, Get Out, there's twists. Us, there's a twist. This film doesn't necessarily have a twist, and it's not like, there's a lot of theories out there about this film, and I won't say which ones are true or whatnot and all that stuff, but try to go in and watch the film. Don't try to look for Easter eggs and clues. Again, this film does require multiple viewings, and to the good and also the bad of the film, because there are some unanswered kind of questions that I had about it, but there are elements of this film that I would just advise, just try to go into this film, because it is more straightforward than any of his other films in regards to the narrative that we have here versus his previous work. But it's still, still layered. It's still extremely layered within the narrative, but it does require multiple viewings for the good of just like appreciating the film and catching things you might have missed. But at the same time, I feel like you got to see it again, because there were some unanswered questions, and you're like, wait, let me go back and see if they answered that particular plot, because it didn't really add up to things. So I will say that as far as my negative. So, and last thing I want to say, this isn't necessarily a negative or a positive, but as far as I do feel like this will be a divisive film, not as much as Us, but I do feel like there will be people that will not just enjoy the film as a whole because of some of the pacing and some of the storytelling. So I'll just kind of put that in there. So before we wrap this thing up, give you my score, let you know if it's worth checking out. If you made it to this point in the video, you're pretty awesome, and I appreciate you. Make sure, if you haven't already, to give the video a thumbs up, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Come and join this community. We have a lot of fun here. So overall, let's talk about this film. 3 movies in, I feel like we're seeing a master at work behind the camera and someone who wants to create an experience like no other. You could never say Jordan Peele is a cookie-cutter storyteller. This film is big in its scope and scale and offers so many moments of levity, moments of thrills within seconds of each other. It makes the viewing experience worth the watch. There are some shortcomings that I had within the development of his characters, some of the subplots, and some of the unanswered questions within the plot that do require multiple viewings, but I definitely feel like this film is worth investing in. So I'll be honest, when I saw the film, I was kind of like, nah, you know, but then when I drove home, then I slept on it. Then I kind of wrote down my notes and all that stuff in the film. I kind of went from nah to I enjoyed this film. I liked this film. I'm going to make a separate video ranking the film, maybe a YouTube short or whatnot. So I'm going to give you that list a little bit later. But again, share yours in the comments. But right now, I'm going to definitely see the film. It's worth seeing in IMAX in particular. But I feel like the film is speaking to me right now. With a caveat, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. And again, it's a caveat. It's a little asterisk in that score. I feel like the score will potentially go up on a second, potentially third viewing of this film, so keep an eye out for that. We're going to probably do a watch-along for this film when this film is available for digital and Blu-ray and all that stuff. So, hey, that's my thoughts on Nope, a 3.5 out of 5. Definitely see it and see it in the biggest screen possible, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I appreciate you so much for watching this review. Again, I love that we have grown this community. 30,000 subscribers means so much to me. And again, if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing and come and join this community. Thank you again for watching the review. Again, just a reminder before you leave to give the video a thumbs up, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. Again, shout out to Into the AM. Check out their awesome apparel. You can use my code to get a discount. Hope you're staying safe. We will be talking more spoilers about this film, so keep an eye out for that video. Thank you again. Come and join the community. Check out my other reviews. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next breakdown.